and then we'll get going. All right. Hey, everybody. Welcome to Fundamentals to Health, a class about the powerful tools for COVID and life. And I'm excited to be here with my special guest, Dr. John Winters. Thank you so much for joining us today.
You bet. We're in a separate room.
Yes, a little interesting with the Zoom call, and I'm just gonna make sure we're live here on our page, and then we'll get going. Cool. We're good to go.
Okay.
So let's talk a little bit about, well, why don't you introduce yourself? Why don't you tell us a little bit about your background and what you did, how long you did it?
Okay. I'm John Winters, a retired naturopathic physician. I graduated in 1990, worked a couple of years as a doctor in Canada, came back to LeGrand. We chose LeGrand out of many areas for lots of reasons, and love it here. I've been practicing in LeGrand since 1992, just retired last year. I'm a naturopathic physician, which is a primary care health provider that is a physician that can treat anything with varying degrees of success, of course. I prefer supporting the body and figuring out what's going on and treating the cause as opposed to merely dealing with symptoms. And so our philosophies are different, but we are able to prescribe any drug you can imagine if we want to. I used to do that as pretty much a last resort because there's generally lots of other better, safer, more effective ways to go. So I'm a physician, but I'm not a conventional MD. So yeah, I just retired a little bit ago, and my interest, of course, is health and how to build that and what that is and what it's not. So that's a little start there.
Very cool. Well, I know a lot of folks I've talked to who you've helped tremendously, and I know you've made a really positive impact through the store and in our community too. So I really appreciate you. And you were 92, so that was almost 30 years.
Yes, yeah, just short of 30 years. I was 30 years as a doctor, and well, in 28, I guess, in LeGrand itself. Yeah, and I was just had my small family practice, which allowed me to do things the way I felt was best. You know, I wasn't a big clinic. I wasn't so busy that I couldn't stop and listen to people and figure out what was going on, which I more and more figured out was my priority as opposed to seeing lots of people. And so, yeah, it was very good. It was a good thing.
Well, that's great. So we've been talking a little bit about this today. So tell me, we've obviously had a spike in coronavirus cases in Union County. Why don't you tell me a little about that, what you know, and what your thoughts are?
Well, I don't know a lot. I mean, we were going to talk tonight anyway and kind of review some things about the COVID virus. And but yeah, just this afternoon, my wife's sister calls from across the state and says, "What the heck is going on in Union County?" And we had no idea. Turns out there's 240 cases now, whereas Friday I think it was 6 to 8.
Yeah.
So things are very different. Yeah. So it's like all this in my little life, it's all been theoretical kind of up to now, but now it's a whole lot closer to home, which just brings up front some of the things that we're going to talk about. It's just being things you might want to do more than just consider. So yeah, it's really important stuff.
Yeah, absolutely.
Amazing.
Yeah, it's definitely here, and you know, we definitely you know, I think everybody was you know, trying to do what they can for their health. I mean, we talked to a lot of people, and initially when the news was coming out, really trying to boost their immune system and boost their health. And I think, you know, maybe we had so little cases for so long, we probably as a community got a little lax.
I know I was, feeling, well, or in Eastern Oregon, it's a great place to be. It's not gonna, get out here or something like that. But I think the thing that's been apparent to me for a long time is, past pandemics take years to run their course. And we're just in the beginning of this. We're not done with it. And I think, unfortunately, we've got a situation where it's so close to home that we might want to stop and think. And for myself, I'll, kind of take things a little bit more seriously as well. So, yeah, interesting.
So tell me a little bit about viruses in general and how they work and
Right.
the thoughts on that.
That's a good question, because when you understand how something works, then you can make much better choices. I remember going through naturopathic medical school, learning about how the gut works, and that changed my diet. I stopped eating a lot of things because I don't want to put that in my gut. That's clearly doesn't work. With viruses, it's basically a speck of protein, and it's just DNA or RNA, depending on the type of virus. There's different kinds of viruses, but they're just minuscule. There's like a 50th the size of a human red blood cell. So they're dwarfed, by comparison to a red blood cell. They're just pure information, and they have some mass, some weight. I don't know what it is, but it's very light, very tiny. So what it means is they float. They can settle on surfaces. They're a physical speck of dust, only very, very tiny and very potentially dangerous. There's millions or a million or so viruses that we know of. A couple 100,000 maybe that we understand a little bit. I think maybe 5,000 we've studied. And yet only a couple % of them are known to be pathogenic or dangerous to people. So the thing is that viruses have been around for thousands and millions of years, longer than humans have, and we've coexisted for a very, very, very long time. So in a sense, this virus is more the same. It's no big deal. It is different in that it tends to be, it's appearing to be more contagious and has some interesting properties that not all viruses have. But the thing is, our bodies have been evolving and coexisting and dealing with viruses for a very, very long time. So it's a tiny speck. And that is why we are doing what we're doing, which is, keeping some distance from people, washing surfaces. And the mask thing, has more value for you, so that when you breathe, you have tiny droplets which tend to float longer in air. If you cough and sneeze, which is clearly a rude thing to do in somebody's face, those are bigger droplets, but they tend to drop out of the air more quickly. So so that's where the mask can come in. So it's it's just mechanical, basic hygiene stuff is going to get you the furthest at this point. And it's especially from public health standpoint, there's no miracle drugs or vaccines available at this time. So simple hygiene is the most powerful step that you can take. And that's something that's free and available to all of us basically. So it's a very good place to start. And of course, as a naturopathic physician, there's a lot of other things that I happen to know about that we can do. So yeah, it's and the thing, it's interesting, this little tiny speck, it is incredibly pared down. It doesn't waste any energy on anything. It's just, like I say, it's pure information, and it gets into your cell and tells your cell what to do. It uses your cell's machinery. It's like, it just commandeers all that stuff. And they're very stealthy because they're so small. They get inside cells where your immune system has a great deal of trouble seeing them or fighting them. which is why antiviral drugs also have problems, because you basically have to kill the living human cell to get at the virus. So viruses are very stealthy, very smart, very tricky. And so they get in your cell and they multiply by the millions, and then they burst out, and then you feel a chill and fever. That's where that comes from, is a viral shower into your bloodstream. And then it's up to your immune system in your body to see it, to fight it, to overcome it. And there's lots of ways to do that. You've heard of, the inflammation. If it gets really severe, you can get a cytokine storm, which is your immune system just pouncing on this virus. And so we can manage that. And then just today I learned that they've found that a steroid hormone, which is an anti-inflammatory, is the only known effective treatment to date, I believe, for COVID in severe cases. So that's just an anti-inflammatory drug, and you really don't want to get to that point where you rely on a drug like that. It's a very powerful steroid drug. So that's a little bit about viruses. So if you just keep in mind, it's just a little floating speck that is looking for a human host. It can't live on surfaces very long. So just keep that sort of stuff in mind. It's a little tiny, well, it's actually not living. Biologists bicker about this, but it's just a speck that's looking for a living host. So don't be that host if you can help it.
Cool. Well, thank you for that. Now we wanted to, touch on the virus a little and what's going on, but mainly tonight we want to talk about the things we can do to be proactive with our health, the things we can do to strengthen our overall health, strengthen our immune system. Talk about how our overall health and our immune system can help us when we encounter viruses or a viral load. Right.
So, and again, since we've got this right today in our backyard, this is pertinent information, I think. Step one is to physically separate yourself from the virus if you can. Stay at home, stay outdoors, don't be around people. I mean, so those are all, things that you can do to a point, but that's tricky and difficult. And while you're on the subject of, social distancing or hygiene and such like that, which are just simple mechanical steps that you can take to keep the virus at bay, think about viral load. So what that means is that they were finding that infections rates go up if you're indoors, or if you are exposed for a long time, or if you're in close proximity. So as opposed to somebody that's passing by or such. So there's things like that. You can, it's all about ratios and chances, basically. And you just want to take every step you can reasonably to minimize your viral load, your exposure to that, that pathogen. And the rest of it is like stuff that you want to be doing anyway. You want to get healthy, one, so you don't get sick as often, because a body that's up and running and does all the things right is far less likely to get sick. And two, if you're healthy, then you feel good. And every day you function better and have more fun. And that's my selfish, reason for being healthy, is that I don't like feeling crummy, and I don't like, just getting by. So there's a lot of things you can do. And I think it's really the most useful to start from the ground up. I think the basics are the most powerful and the easiest. And those are things like what you eat, what you drink, what you breathe, and what you do and think and say every day. That's it. So, and my interest in this is not only stuff that, we know or we think we know, but it's like when science finds out that, golly, our thoughts are important. When I think hateful thoughts or I'm stressed out or I'm worried, that changes my body chemistry. It changes my immune system, all in the negative direction. It changes my blood sugar and et cetera, et cetera. So it's all very interesting what goes on there. So I guess as far as those basics, water is very high on the list.
Why? So there was something you told me, there was a term you told me, it's something about a healthy body doesn't get sick or something. And you're like, it sounds stupid, but
Right, right.
if you do the things and you have the basic fundamental health practices to increase your overall health and your immune system, you're just in a much better position to not get sick and then to also handle things when you do get sick.
Right, exactly.
And I think we're seeing that people who are in not a strong health position, who are having health issues or immunocompromised, or they're just overall health isn't very good, they're not handling this very well. And so I think that's extra motivation for us to take the steps we need to get our health in order, to check ourselves at the door and be like, how am I living?
Right, absolutely.
How are you living today, Dr. Winters?
Yeah.
You living right?
I'm stressed out. No, doing good. I was back in school. A friend of mine, a clever fellow, said, healthy people don't get sick. And it's like, well, duh. But the point is that healthy people, their circulation is better, their muscle mass, their blood sugar, their body weight, their attitudes. There's so many things. And the beautiful point is that you don't have to be, in great shape or have a lot of money or a wonderful spouse. I mean, to be healthy. I mean, you can do a lot of things that improve your health that are simple ways, like drink more water or get out for a walk or, improve your diet or stuff like that.
Let's go through these. We're going to go through,
okay.
Quickly, we're going to go through water. We're going to go through nutrition. We're going to go through exercise, sleep. We're going to go through sleep. We're going to go through stress, mental, emotional, spiritual health. We're going to talk about supplements. We're going to talk about fresh air and sunshine. And we're going to go through these. I want to save a little time at the end for you to maybe add a little bit about some of the things you talked about with a fever and water treatment and things like that.
Okay.
But, so let's start with water. I want to know, what do you think about water? Why is it so important? And how much should I be drinking?
Right. Water to our human body is like oil is to a car. You don't want to run dry. And it's true. I used to be a paramedic in Portland, and my patient was shot. He was bleeding out quickly, and his blood got darker and thicker. And when we stuck an IV in him, his blood was so thick it was barely moving. And that's an extreme case of somebody who's lost some volume. But the similar situation occurs when you're dehydrated. And when you're dehydrated, even a little bit, I don't remember the percentage numbers, but it's not a lot. Your blood does physically get thicker, which changes everything. As you might imagine, it's harder for your heart to push thick blood through your vessels. Thick blood doesn't get into the nooks and crannies in the corners in your capillary beds. It doesn't deliver the nutrients or remove the toxins from tissues as well as you would like. So it's just like you're wearing a plastic bag over your head. You could probably breathe, but not so well, and it's not going to be a lot of fun. And you might get dizzy and you might fall over. But it's we see this every day, that people's lives and their bodies are functioning at 60%, or they're just not functioning as well as they could. And water is one of the cheapest, safest things. I mean, it's pretty rare that somebody drinks too much water. It's pretty safe stuff. And that, if you have a headache, if you have fatigue, if you're depressed, I've personally found that a glass of water is very often the cure, because it's true, our bodies can get used to being dehydrated, and we just get used to bumping along the bottom. Yeah. And I really try and get folks to feel good. And the rest of that story is like, it should be water. It shouldn't be lots of other stuff. You know, there's lots of things you can drink that have food colorings and preservatives and sugar and you know, all sorts of other things. Pure water is what your body needs. Even chlorine is not something you want in your body. Again, chlorine is good for the public water system. It's good for the pipes to, you know, and up to your faucet, but it's not good for your body. You know, it's a great antimicrobial, chlorine is. And it makes sense, but you don't want it in your body. So either filter it out or, you know, do something like that. So pure water is the best. That's what your body needs. Should I just press on, or is there anything else about water?
Yeah. Yeah.
How much? Or
yeah. So what do you think? How much should I be drinking of that stuff?
Yeah, and I think it's safe to say most of us probably don't drink enough. I mean, you always hear that, and I know I'm guilty of that. You know, you can drink till your urine's clear, which is a pretty good indication. But if you're taking vitamins or something else, that can mess that up a little bit, because vitamins darken your urine or color it. I think the best I've read is eat or drink half of your weight in water. So if you weigh 150 pounds, drink 75 ounces of water a day. So that's a pretty good couple of quarts a day.
You know, it's interesting you say about how we adapt to being dehydrated, and our bodies adapt to be able to live in a dehydrated state, but we get so used to it and then we forget. We just think that's the amount of water we should drink, you know. And I noticed for me, when I started getting more water, my body started saying, oh, that's the amount of water I should have. You know, sure, I go pee more often, but that was what I was always told too, is on fires, is your urine should be clear. You should have a lot of volume and it should be clear. And they always told us, drink your water the day you hydrate today for tomorrow. So, you know, if you can't hydrate today for today, you need to hydrate today for tomorrow.
So you're firefighting, huh?
Yeah, I did that back in my college days.
Yeah, water would be very important, because yeah, you can get weak and dizzy and all sorts of things. Yeah.
And drinking water at the correct times can be important too. I know that when you first get up, drinking water early in the morning helps to activate the internal organs. And if you drink, it's better to not drink with your meals, because it can dilute your stomach acids and help them they won't be able to digest the food and absorb the vitamins and minerals as much that you need.
Which is a common problem. A lot of people have, low stomach acid levels, and if you're in a hurry, you just calf down your food, then you choke, so you drink more water. Well, if you're eating more slowly, you won't need to wash it down with water, and it's a good idea to not drink too much fluids with meals, right?
Yeah, and if you drink like 30 minutes before a meal, is better to drink a glass of water before a meal, about 30 minutes, and then it's better to not until about an hour after. And I don't do perfect at it, but I've definitely been more aware of it.
Yeah, it's interesting.
So yeah, okay, let's move on to nutrition. I think the water thing, interestingly for me, ties in with the nutrition, because I've been reading and studying a lot about a whole food plant-based diet. And what's interesting is a lot of chronic diseases don't exist in parts of the world where they have a whole food plant-based diet. And I think that plants have, what I understand is plants have about 90% water. So if we're getting a lot of whole food plants, that's going to go well with our bodies that are 70% water. Whereas a lot of the animal products or other things are about 60%. And what else are with an overabundance of animal products is an overabundance of oil, grease, cholesterol. And funny story, when I was moved into this house, it's 100 years old, I couldn't get the kitchen sink to drain. And I was like, what in the world? I finally had to get my friend to come over, my plumber friend, and we went underneath the house and we cut out like a 10-foot section of pipe that was completely full of cholesterol, grease from years of cooking. And then I watched this movie called Forks Over Knives, and they were doing a triple bypass surgery on a guy, and they pulled out cholesterol that looked just like that out of his artery. And so, what doesn't mix with water? Grease and oil and cholesterol. So if your body's 90% or 70% water and you're putting a bunch of grease and oil in it all the time, fried foods, and it doesn't have to be just animal products, because I know people, you can have just the same problems eating a vegan junk food diet. I've seen it happen. So tell me a little bit from your point of view, Dr. Winters. I've heard it said that the standard American diet is like banging your shin on the coffee table 3 times a day and wondering why it always hurts.
Ouch! I hate that. Yeah, it's interesting, but it's a lot more complicated than that. Of course, it's like, you know, food as our food processors have figured out, you know, sugar, fat, and salt are triggers that our human tongues love, because in days past they were hard to come by. And so in general, processed foods have some or all of those in excessive quantities. And the trouble with that is, that analogy is that you know, you eat something that is partially or wholly addictive. I mean, but seriously, some of these foods make you want more. Is the results aren't typically immediate, like kicking your shin into a table, which is too bad, because your blood sugar is affected immediately and long term. Your body weight and your hormone levels, your brain chemistry, you know, a lot of things can be adversely affected by what you eat. And you're right, you know, nature has figured out a lot of things there that I think we'd be better off listening to. And that is true. Plants generally have the right balance of nutrients. They have fiber built in. They have lots of water built in. And yes, Pritikin and other people in the past have had huge studies, and they found that fiber was one of the few, you know, factors that led to early death, of the lack of fiber. And our standard Western diet has very little fiber in it. So there's so many diets out there, and they all have something interesting and useful and good about them. But the place to start is you know, is an unprocessed local whole foods diet as you can find, and start with that and go from there, because it's hard to go wrong with minimally processed foods.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's hard to argue with eat your vegetables, right? Eat your fruit. I mean, we've all heard that. It's just that the voices out there have gotten a little confusing,
very confusing. And, you know, it's just interesting. The other day, it was Dr. Birx, who's the head of the infectious CDC, and she was saying that, you know, if we can control that, now's a great, you know, good time, better time than ever to control your comorbid factors or your predisposing factors. And of course, it's always a good time to take care of your weight or your blood sugar or your hypertension. But of course, she was citing that the people that have not controlled those issues are at special risk for COVID-19. So there's another reason to be careful about those sort of things. So,
yeah.
And there's lots of ways of treating those illnesses, you know, without drugs. And there's lots of these things we're talking about tonight that will have some bearing on hypertension and heart disease and lung stuff. In fact, I want to touch on that a little bit later.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, thank you. You know, some good resources that I've been reading over the last several months for a whole food plant-based diet, if you want to look into that, there's Forks Over Knives is a book and a movie. There is, they also have a cookbook. The book How Not to Die. Also, there's the China Study by Colin B. Caldwell, or
I don't remember.
Yeah. And then there's anything by Joel Furman. There's several of them. I'll post a list to the comments for people of books. So tell me, what about organic? What do you think about organic?
Yeah, you know, I've heard people argue that in various ways. Basically, you know, based on my understanding of the human body, I've been studying this a long time, and I've been practicing, and I've seen a lot. And from my understanding of how science and the human body works, I think makes a lot of sense to just be as clean as you can with your diet. And I look askance at anything you add that's artificial. I mean, I think, we humans do all sorts of wonderful, clever things, but if it doesn't work in the body, or if the body's never seen it, or if it's, out and out, annoying to the body, you're just going to create more problems that it doesn't need. So I'm looking at, non-food items. I came across I was given a little container of ice cream. I looked at the ingredients, and the first ingredient was skim milk. The rest of the ingredients were chemicals, things that made it thicker, things that made it white, things that, preserved it. And that just doesn't make sense. When you know how the human gut works, you know that you don't want to put that stuff in your gut because it's not going to use it. It's not a nutrient, and it might clog it up or create inflammation. Or now we're finding out a lot that foods and non-foods, a lot of things affect our gut biome, which is the environment in your gut of all those various bacteria and such that affect everything, which is very interesting. So there's so much we have yet to know and learn. I just think it's a bad idea to put foreign material in our body. And it comes in all sorts of size and shape, or forms. It can taste good. It can make a food thicker. It can make a food this and that, but it's just not worth it. And it's interesting, we in the Union County, we grow wheat, and wheat has, I used to know like almost all the proteins in it. It's got fat in it. It's got fiber in it. So we refine that. We remove just about everything, and we add, a handful of vitamins back in, and we call it enriched bread or enriched flour. Well, it's not anywhere near as useful to the body or nutritious in the enriched form as it was in the whole unprocessed form. So, if you want something light and fluffy, great. But if you want something that feeds your body, then, whole grains are a better way to go.
Yeah, that makes sense. The way organic and non-GMO was explained to me was in the movie Secret Ingredients, and it made a lot of sense to me, but I hadn't even bought in 100% to the organic non-GMO thing until I watched that movie, and it was like, whoa. But we have that movie here. It's called Secret Ingredients, but in a nutshell, basically Roundup was invented as an industrial drain cleaner. And when it came out the other end, it killed all the vegetation. And so they took it and modified it to be a herbicide, because they're like, this will kill plants. So they modified it, and it worked to kill plants, kill weeds, and that's what they wanted to do. But eventually it was killing some of the crops. But that was about the time that genetic modification was coming about. And so they were able to genetically modify plants to hold up to Roundup. And so, like, for me, I think like food was designed to kind of fit in the body, right? Match up. And if you alter the genetic composition of the food, it's not going to match with the genetics of the body. And if you then take that on top of that and spray an industrial drain cleaner on it, it's probably not going to be the best for you.
Well, right. And I think so often we make choices based on profit as opposed to health in any of its forms, whether it be spiritual or physical or mental. But so that's So I do try and get organic most of the time, and there's some cases when it's less important. But yeah, I think clearly consuming a diet and leading a life that is as clean as you can is a wise idea.
Yeah, the Dirty Dozen and the Clean 15 is a good reference for those who want to see what foods are maybe more important to have organic and which
just do everything you can to clean up your diet.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Well, we'll move on to exercise. One last thing, and just be, we always try to talk to people. One thing Linda instilled in me here, and we've talked about, is don't focus on getting rid of all the bad things in the world. You know, we're all in different spots in our journey. You know, maybe you are at the point where you're going to get rid of all the bad things in the world, you know, but wherever you're at, don't focus on trying to get rid of everything. Just start adding in good things. Add in one good thing at a time. If you're not eating a fruit and a vegetable every day, eat a fruit. Start eating a fruit for breakfast. Start eating a vegetable for lunch. If you want to just do a salad for dinner, or just start adding in one raw whole food plant
Right.
with every meal, wherever you're at, whatever works with you. And as you've told me, Dr. Winters, find something you like, because if you like it, you'll do it.
Right, absolutely. And I think we should all cut ourselves a little slack too. I think, I think bottom line, life was meant to be an interesting adventure and fun, and it's not to be, you don't want to live by an onerous long list of shoulds and shouldn'ts. And that's part why I'm careful about what I eat, and I do exercise every day. And I've over the years, I might add, evolved into some habits that seem to be working pretty well for me. But it's because I really love to feel healthy, and I don't like being sick and all that sort of stuff. So it's a very selfish thing, but it serves me well. So
Well,
yeah.
speaking of that, being healthy and being able to move, let's talk about exercise and the benefits. You know, you gave me that excellent handout about the benefits of exercise. Tell me about the exercise and its benefits for the immune system and overall health.
Sure. Exercise is I just love it because it's, I try and put myself in other people's lives, just imagine, but, that's pretty much all of us can exercise. It's, even people in wheelchairs, can do something. And the point is movement. You don't have to buy gear if you don't want. Although there's a lot of fun things to buy out there, but exercise is something that's available to all of us. It does require work, however, and you're not going to get around that. I think, and that's, to me, that's the beauty of health and nature, is you get what you give. Your body isn't going to build endurance or strength or a clear mind without you working on it. So it's a very fair system. But yeah, exercise is just amazing what it does. Yeah, it's very important. It helps move blood. Just the act of breathing. When you inhale, it creates a negative pressure in your chest. That's a pump. It sucks blood into your chest. And when you exhale, it's the opposite. So that's a pump. Moving is a pump, because your heart pumps blood away from your heart, and your muscles are responsible for pumping it back to your heart, because your heart can't pump it through the whole cycle. So after the capillary beds in your skin and your muscles, it's the flexing muscles that pump blood back to your heart. So if you have just stay focused on the virus, if you have an infection that's starting to brew, you want to deliver the armed forces. You want to deliver the immune system to that site, and you want to remove the infection. And what better way to do that than to move your blood? And that's why, lifting weights or walking or cycling or swimming, there's any number of things you can do. It kind of doesn't matter unless you have some specific goal in mind, but basically just, move your body around. And you could dance, you could garden, you could do a lot of sort of things. So, and further, your hormones get leveled out and moderated, which is good. Nobody likes high testosterone or high estrogen or high cortisol, which is the stress hormone. All these hormones yank your body around and make life difficult for you and everybody around you. So having, moderated hormone levels, blood sugar is huge, because that sets off infections and circulation issues, and hyperinsulinemia and obesity and diabetes, and And so type 2 diabetes, which you get, typically later in life because of predispositions, but also because of what you eat and your inactivity, it messes with your circulation and suppresses your immune system, and you gain weight. And so exercise is like pretty much the number one way of dealing with that. So, gosh, exercise is good for your brain. I mean, most of you know that coming back from a run, you feel much better. You're relaxed, you're energized, and all, you could just go on forever about the benefits of exercise. And Blake does have a handout of a list of some of those things.
Yeah.
Just on and on.
Removing, I like the two, I think you mentioned a little bit on this, but removing toxins from tissues, removing toxins from away and white blood cells toward.
Right.
And also with the stress reduction and relaxation, that's going to really tremendously help your immune system, which we're going to talk about as well. So let's go into sleep. Speaking of rest, let's go into sleep and how that is important for our bodies. And
I think that's a good question. Sleep is kind of underrated, and golly, through school years, and I knew people that try and get by on, 4 hours or 6 hours, and, they were productive and so on and so forth. And that's all very admirable. But more and more we're finding out sleep is really, interesting and very important. You don't just pass out and lay there. Your body is not just doing nothing. It turns out that, it takes your muscles, 20, 30 minutes to rest up. The blood washes out the lactic acid, and, so your muscles are regenerated pretty quickly. It's your brain and your nervous system that cycle in and out of different phases of sleep that, there's the rapid eye movement, and there's, deeper sleep and so on, that your brain is practicing things. It's organizing the day. It's organizing thoughts and what you learned and memories. And so if you don't get sleep, if you're a student, your studies are compromised, and anybody else in life that, had anything important happen is going to lose track of some of those things. Your hormones are affected. Your immune system bolsters up overnight. Your adrenals rest up overnight, which are your stress response mechanisms. And growth hormone also doesn't get released from your brain until stage 4 sleep, which is like the deepest level of sleep. So if you're sleeping with a radio or TV going, or the dog's barking, or your spouse or somebody in the bed is kicking and snoring, your sleep is going to be compromised, and your health is going to be compromised. You need to get into a quiet, dark room that you feel safe in, ideally, and get some serious sleep in. And it's like 7-8 hours or such, and it's different for everybody, but probably the best way to figure that out is to go to bed at a decent hour, 10-ish or something like that. Everybody's a little different. And sleep until you wake up, because that's when you're, after a few days, you'll know what your pattern is, because it's important you get enough sleep. And if you're waking up because of something or an alarm per se, you're probably not getting enough sleep. And that's gonna, have a bad effect on your performance. And, if your performance is, as a student or something is important, that's obvious. But even as a parent or a spouse or anything, if you're not thinking clearly, if you're having a bad day, if you're tired or your energy isn't good, your health, your lack of health will be radiated all around you and everybody you meet. So, so sleep is underrated, and it's very important. And is that enough, or should we just just honor it? Do what you got to do to get a good night's sleep. kick out the husband or the dog or the cat or whatever it takes, make arrangements, and, you know, like slow down in the evening, avoid screens, or oh, it's f.lux is an app that you can put on your, probably others on your computer, that blocks out the blue after sunset. So there's things like that can help. So
Cool. Yeah, 7 to 9 hours. Some studies will show that, you know, too much sleep can be bad.
Right.
And too little sleep can be bad. So let's go on. Let's talk about. Let's real briefly talk about fresh air and sunshine, and then we'll talk about stress, because I want to just talk about those two briefly, and then let's get into the supplements and what we can do there.
So outdoors and sunshine.
Yeah. Let's go there.
Yeah, outdoors in general, it's nice because you get fresh air, and especially now it's obvious because there's fewer viruses that are getting blown away. But fresh air is very different than indoor air. It is more oxygen, and there's, you know, fewer pollutants of all sorts. You know, if you just live in a new house or put down a new carpet, you've got solvents in the air. There's all sorts of things that can go wrong in a building. We've all heard of sick building syndrome. But even in a stuffy house, you know, you can do better than that. So getting out is very nice. And similarly with full spectrum light, you know, the sun, you know, shines all, you know, lots of colors, some of which we can see in the visible spectrum. But, you know, incandescent bulb only has a fraction of that. LEDs are a little bit wider spectrum. So in other words, indoor lighting is quite different. And the light levels are surprisingly different. I should look this up. It's only like 20% or 10% light levels indoors because there's a whole lot more light outside than indoors. And this is important because that stimulates the brain, the natural light. So like natural light will suppress melatonin levels, which will help you wake up in the morning. So that's all wonderful. And also full spectrum light outdoors has UV light, which in you know, moderate quantities is very good because it helps, it's what your skin uses to make vitamin D. And that's another subject in itself. But vitamin D is one of the most useful, powerful things you can do to stay healthy because it's so centrally involved with the immune system and other things. So get outside in the, you know, full spectrum light, half hour a day, maybe start a little, you know, start at 15 minutes and work your way up, but never ever get burned, but do expose yourself to the sun a little bit. So that's outdoor light and air.
Oh, awesome. Well, yeah, it's so true. The vitamin D thing, it's so important. So many of us through the winter get low in that. We can be even low in that through the summer. It's so important for the immune system. Then, you know, even just getting outside in the winter for like 15 minutes and getting sun on your face, or even through the clouds, that can really help your body start producing vitamin D. So let's go to stress. Talk about that briefly.
Right. Well, I guess, you know, don't get stressed because you'll get sick if you do. So that's the message, right? No, stress is interesting. So for starters, just basic mechanics. If you think that you are under siege, or if something's wrong, then you basically are. And so it doesn't always have to be real. So if you think something is going wrong, your body will react as if it, you know, is a problem. So, and I just mentioned that because the way we think can get us into trouble sometimes. So it's just, again, just look at the facts and decide from there. So basically, if you perceive that you're under siege, your brainstem, the primitive brain, the rat brain, is going to react. It's just trying to keep you alive. It tells you when to breathe and how how fast your heart beats. If it thinks you're under, if you think, oh no, what if, then you get, if you have anxiety or, fear, then your hormone levels change, your blood levels, blood sugar changes, and so on. So talk back to that. There's various ways of dealing with that, but at first, you just have to understand that that's how your body works. An interesting, some interesting research by the Institute of Heart Math in California has found that your heart rate will react to stress. And to make a long story short, they found that thoughts affect your heart rate and affect heart disease. And they found that appreciation, I believe, is one of the words that had the most positive effects on your heart. So this is just say, if you take any situation and you appreciate the good parts of it as opposed to dwell on the bad parts, that alone can change your inner chemistry. And that is something we always want to do anyway. And especially now, I mean, there's no end of scary news. And so we just have to do our best to, work with it the best we can and be as positive about that as we can.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we can choose, our thoughts a lot of times are regulated by what we input into our brain. So if we're inputting a lot of negative news, a lot of negative talking, if we're speaking a lot of negative words, that can really have a big impact on your health overall. And so I think it's important to find positive things. If Facebook is causing you to be negative, get off Facebook. If you need to turn the news off, fast from those things for a while. Get away from some of that negativity. Start pouring in positive things for me. I know for me personally, cultivating a love of God and a love for people and just spending that time for me in a lifestyle of forgiveness adds to my health and wellness. There's a verse in Proverbs that reads, "A cheerful heart is good medicine, but a crushed spirit dries up the bones." Don't hesitate to seek help from somebody in dealing with some of this stuff. 9 out of 10 illnesses originate in the mind. So worry, bitterness, unresolved anger, fear, anxiety, they can wreak havoc on the body system. But on the other hand, love, trust, forgiveness are really good for the immune system. So. Right.
And these are things that are within everybody's grasp. So, it's interesting. You probably, I don't know if you've heard of Agatha Thrash. Agatha and Calvin Thrash were MDs in the 50s and 60s and 70s. And she said, it's what you do, think, and say every day that makes the most difference. And so it's not just exercising and drinking water and eating organic, but it's what you think. As a person thinketh, so is they, so are they. Mm-hmm. So yeah, there's wisdom in all corners, and it's just interesting that these little invisible thoughts are so powerful. So.
Okay, well, let's get into these supplements, and I just want to know, we have this list here. I have some of my favorites. You have some of your favorites. Let's just, why don't you tell me from this, what are your top 3 or combating viruses and respiratory issues?
Right. I just would start by, everybody's health is different. And to me, that was the fascination of being a doctor. I can take all of what we know and mix it with the person sitting in front of me and come up with, the solutions. But so you'll have to do that on your own or somehow. But there are some generalities that we can touch on. But if you have lung issues, if you have a history of lung issues, now's a very good time to be very careful of that. And if you have a cardiovascular history, or if you have inflammatory conditions, there's ways you might want to preemptively, treat those or have them under special control. And naturopathically, there are all sorts of interventions that you can do specifically. And of course, there's drugs as well that can do that, which if you're more desperate, you can do that. But there's, in my opinion, downsides oftentimes. So I guess my favorites, I like garlic a lot, especially the fact that it's been around so long and it's still so effective at so many infections, whereas antibiotics have, bugs have become antibiotic resistant and superbugs and stuff like that. A lot of these are still susceptible to garlic. So it's a bit of a miracle that you went. And the beauty of garlic, especially for respiratory issues, is that it goes through the lungs and it affects that area especially. I've used a lot of golden seal and echinacea over the years. Elderberry is supposed to be very good for this. Again, if I had a lung issues, I would think about lobelia and lomatium, and there's antiviral plants. There's anti-inflammatory approaches. Obviously there's lots of options.
Yeah, andrographis, and I'm gonna give everybody a list of these things.
Okay.
Books, all the tips and all the supplements. We'll have lists here at the store for everybody so that you can come get the summary for your reference.
It's nice.
But yeah, andrographis is antimicrobial. Astragalus, colloidal silver. Sovereign silver was actually used as an antibiotic before penicillin was invented, so that's
Right.
a really powerful one. Echinacea, like you mentioned, obviously. Garlic is really great, is antimicrobial and can be excreted through your lungs. Perfect for treating lung infections. I think I got that from you last time. And garlic, you can eat that raw. You can mince that on your food. It's super powerful. We have some pickled garlic. We have capsules. It's a really, really good one. So I've heard quite a bit and been reading quite a bit about vitamin A, C, D, zinc. Okay, so if you can get vitamin A, C, D, and zinc, those are some really good ones to have in your system right now in regards to COVID.
So vitamin A, if I might, what happens with the COVID virus is that it enters through your sinuses, your nose, maybe your mouth. So your sinuses, your epithelia, your mucous membranes are first line of defense. Your lungs, likewise, are lined by the same types of cells, the epithelial cells. So vitamin A is great. It's very good. What it does is it rebuilds and strengthens those tissues. So you could take vitamin A, and I think the RDA is 5,000 IUs a day. You can take 25,000 for just about ever. You can take 50,000 for, if I remember correctly, like 6 months or months. So you can do high dose A for a while. And if you are if you've been exposed or are highly suspicious, or if you got symptoms, you could consider, bolstering up your lungs and your sinuses. So in other words, you want to do your best at preventing, and if you don't prevent, then you preemptively treat. And if you actually get sick, then you want to minimize, you want to head it off as soon as you can in as many ways as you can. And then of course, the hospital is an option, the ICU is an option, but you really want to do your best to resist all those steps. So
yeah.
Vitamin C is antiviral. It's been around a long time. There's a lot of studies that seem to back that up pretty good. And zinc is always good for the immune system. Vitamin D is huge for the immune system. I might actually, in light of our recent outbreak here in the county, I might go back to taking D. I don't usually in the summer months, but I might now. So for a while. So.
Yeah. Thank you for that. That's good to hear your perspectives on those. Again, I'll have a list of those. I'll have a list of the books. I'll have a list of the tips for you at the store here. We're also going to do a big deal on supplements all day Wednesday, all day tomorrow. And you're going to save 10% on your entire purchase if you come in here and get your supplements that you need. If you can't make it tomorrow on Wednesday, message me and I'll work something out with you. But yeah, we're gonna do that, and we can help you find those things on the list that you want to do. Another one that I really like is Wellness Formula. Wellness Formula is one that's been one of my go-tos for a long time, and it has almost all of these things that we're talking about in it. And you know, I think just maybe in closing here, and you can add your thoughts too, Dr. Winters, but in closing, I think just, you know, healthy habits and adding in the right supplements can put you in a strong immune stance to help protect you against bacteria and viruses, and can improve your overall long-term health. Just remember that small habits lead to big change over time. And here at Nature's Pantry, we consider it an honor and a privilege to help in any way we can, and we'd be happy to talk to you on the fly or even in a scheduled consultation. We do those for free here. And you know, that's, you know, health is the greatest wealth. So invest in your health because you're worth it. And there's never been a better time to, or a better reason in the last 100 years, from what I can tell, to really, you know, dive in and work on these fundamental health habits that are not only going to put you in a better immune stance and overall health, but these are the things that are going to help reduce chronic disease like diabetes, obesity, heart disease, autoimmune problems. I mean, just you name it, you list it. If you can really start working on these small habits, and just one at a time. You know, what happens if you start a new habit? One good habit leads to another. So focus on that one thing. If you're not doing the water, focus on the water. Get that on lockdown. And what you're going to find is other things follow. You're going to start wanting to eat some more vegetables, you know. You're going to start wanting to exercise because you're starting to take pride in that, and they just feed each other. It's really neat how that happens.
Right, absolutely. Yeah, the better you feel, the more you want to be that way, and the better you get at knowing what works and what doesn't work. Once you get health, you really don't want to let it go. So it's a great thing. So yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Dr. Winters. It's always a pleasure meeting with you and talking with us, or talking with you. And I always enjoy it, and it's always so informative, and I've learned so much from you, and really appreciate what you do and what you're doing for the community through these meetings. Thank you so much.
Well, I appreciate Nature's Pantry doing this. And, you know, there's almost no better place to start than with food, you know. So I think you're definitely, you know, you got a business that is driven largely by philosophy, and not, which is a good thing. I think we could use more of that these days. So do things for the right reason as opposed to profit or something like that. But so yeah, thank you very much, and we'll expand this next time or work into something else. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, thank you so much. And remember, everybody watching, you know, invest in your health. You are worth it. We'll see you next time. See you, Dr. Winters.
Thank you.